Relics always announce themselves by clinging to history. That was the Council's joke, as our armada translated into the system's 10,000 holes in ceremonial spread. Banners active, comes open. I watched the tactical board bloom with icons, and felt the familiar calm of scale. Against us, the human presence resolved into 67 signatures. Metal-heavy, angular, broadcasting in narrowband, like they feared being overheard. Primitive habits. Honest ones. We logged them as kinetics only. Thick armor, slow drives. Ethical noise in their transmissions, warnings about civilians, demands for recognition, talk of law. Species like this always wrapped weakness in words. They believed war was persuasion. We believed war was processing. The first minutes followed doctrine. Range held at 2.4 million kilometers. Our forward cruisers aligned their emitters, energy. Lattice humming, at regulation output. The goal was demonstration, not destruction. Break their will. Tag their holes. Record compliance. I authorized the opening salvo with a flick of assent. Human ships did not scatter. They did not maneuver. They did not even acknowledge the fire. Energy lances crossed the void in perfect geometry, intersecting human holes at predicted vectors. The tactical board waited for the familiar cascade shield bloom, thermal spike. Subsystem collapse, none came. Readouts refreshed. Again, still nothing. Confirm coupling, I said, irritation sharpening my tone. Confirmed. My adjutant replied. Efficiency. Negligible. Negligible was not a number. I demanded one. 0.3%, she said. And falling. Silence took the bridge. 10,000 hulls watched, 67 refused to react. No evasive burn. No flare of pain. Their armor drank the light, and stayed dark. Relics? My aide. Whispered, as if the word itself might restore order. I felt something colder than doubt. Doctrine assumed fear. Doctrine assumed response. These ships were denying both. I ordered a second volley. Higher yield, tighter focus. Again, nothing. Human hulls rode the impacts like rain. A line of text scrolled across the human channel, plain and unadorned. We are sovereign. Withdraw. It was the phrasing that offended me. Not defiant sovereignty. As if they believed the term still applied. As if they thought law could exist without permission. I authorized escalation protocols. Boarding teams stood by. Population models updated. Their inhabited worlds numbered 3 in system, civilian density moderate. Processing would be efficient. This was supposed to be easy. Then the human icons began to move, not scatter, not retreat. They advanced slow at first, then faster, drives flaring with a steadiness that ignored our threat envelopes. Range closed by 40,000 kilometers in a single update. Then more. My tactical board recalculated formations. Lines bent, elegant curves warped. Someone on the bridge said, "They're accelerating." I stared at the numbers climbing past expectation. Past safety margins, past what any sane species would attempt with crews aboard. Relics do not do this. I told myself. A new message arrived. Identical in tone to the first. Withdraw. This will escalate. For the first time in 100 campaigns. I did not issue an immediate order. I watched the board. I watched the distance fall. I felt the shape of the battle changing under my feet. Processing could wait. We needed to understand what we were facing before it arrived. Terms are how order introduces itself. I convened the council line at 2.1 million kilometers, tightening our formation into a posture they would recognize as authority. 10,000 hulls aligned, emitters cooled, boarding lances armed, but held. The humans had closed the distance again another 60,000 kilometers, then stopped. As if marking an invisible boundary only they could see, their lead ship transmitted. No flourish, no emblem. A single carrier wave. We will not accept Withdraw all forces. That was all. No appeals, No bargaining. No threats. Calm, brief, finished. It was the tone that drew murmurs across my bridge. Species that understood power pleaded. Species that resisted, shouted. This one stated. I responded with the formal writ. Recognition of Council supremacy. Immediate disarmament. Transfer of orbital control. Population audits to follow. I kept my voice measured, instructional, as if explaining gravity to a child. They replied in 4.2 seconds, no, one word, clean. Final. I felt irritation sharpen into something like offense. 67 ships, denying a structure that had processed 300 civilizations. Their message logs still carried ethical markers warnings about civilian harm, insistence on mutual withdrawal corridors. As if war were a negotiation instead of a function. Update compliance models, I ordered. Adjusted, my adjutant said. Probability of voluntary submission. Below 1%. Expected, I replied. They mistake restraint for weakness.
Right.
The demonstrative strike package. Not annihilation. Education. 12 cruisers detached from the forward arc, emitters, tuned for surface skim yields. Targets selected. Uninhabited moons, high visibility orbits, shock without blood. Processing begins with spectacle, we announced. The countdown on open channels. 60 seconds. The humans did not interrupt. Their ships held position, hulls still dark, drives idling, at a steady burn that bled heat into nothing. At 40 seconds, they transmitted again. If you fire, this escalates. There was no anger in it. No urgency. A statement of sequence. I almost admired the discipline of it. At 20 seconds, my sensors flagged another anomaly. Human ships adjusting internal mass distribution. Armor layers shifting. I dismissed it as preparatory bracing and instinctive flinch before impact. At 10 seconds, the moons rotated into alignment. Clean sightlines. Perfect optics. The kind of image that traveled well in archives. Fire. ISA.energy, lances leaped outward, 12 precise threads of light. Impacts blossomed across barren stone. Crusts fractured. Debris plumed into space. Spectacular. Controlled. Exactly as planned. The humans did not react. No distress calls. No change in formation. No emotional spike in their traffic. Their lead. Ship transmitted once more. After the debris cleared, escalation, acknowledged. That was the phrase. Not threatened. Acknowledged. As if we had checked a box, I ordered the cruisers back into line, uneasy now. Demonstrations were supposed to produce movement panic negotiation, at least noise. Instead, the range ticked down again. Another 30,000 kilometers gone. A junior officer spoke without being recognized. Admiral, they're still advancing. I silenced him with a glance, and fixed my eyes on the board. 67 icons, steady and unafraid. Crossing thresholds, my doctrine treated as impossible. We had shown them power. They had shown us intent. I authorized full combat readiness and felt, for the first time, the faint pressure of time working. Against us. Fire is how certainty proves itself. I ordered a full spectrum strike at 1.6 million kilometers. No more demonstrations. No surfaces. No warnings. 10,000 emitters synchronized across the fleet. Energy bands stacked for penetration. Harmonics tuned to overwhelm any known defense lattice. The Council had ended wars with less. The void. Lit lances crossed space in layered brilliance, converging on the advancing human line. Tactical projections predicted cascading failures, shields collapsing in 0.8 seconds. Armor flash boiling, hull breaches propagating along stress seams. The board prepared casualty estimates before the impact landed. They struck. Human hulls vanished inside light. For a heartbeat, even I expected debris. Then the light passed through them and kept going. No bloom, no thermal spike, no dispersal. Cloud. The human ships emerged unchanged. Matte armor intact. Silhouettes sharp. Not a single icon flickered. Report, I said, already leaning forward. Energy coupling. Minimal, my adjutant replied, voice tight. Recalculating. Numbers. Refreshed across the board. I watched disbelief take numerical form. Efficiency, 0.7%. Correction, 0.4%. Correction, 0.3%. Explain, I said. Armor absorption layers are sinking the load, she said, not reflecting, not dispersing, converting. Converting. To what? There was a pause. Heat, sir, and storing it. Storing it. We fired again. Different bands, higher yield. Focused beams narrowed to surgical precision. Impacts crawled across human hulls like harmless static. The efficiency dropped further. 0.19%. 0.11%. Someone whispered a prayer in a dialect not used in centuries. This is not possible, one of my captains said. No material can they. Aren't materials? Another interrupted, staring at the data. They're systems. The human ships advanced through the fire, closing another 80,000 kilometers while under continuous bombardment. Their formation never wavered. No evasive maneuvers. Just steady motion, like an argument made with mass. A standalone line appeared on the human channel. Your weapons are inefficient. It was not taunting. It was informational. I ordered flank elements to concentrate fire on a single target, their lead battleship. If anything would break, it would be the largest mass. Power levels spiked well beyond safety margins. Emitters screamed warnings. We overrode them. The battleship took it all. Armor plates glowed faintly, then dimmed. Internal temperatures rose, stabilized, and fell. No breach. No loss of velocity. The ship continued forward, as if walking through weather. Efficiency now at 0.03%, my adjutant said, .0-.0-3. 10,000 ships firing. 67, advancing. My command channel erupted with questions. Demands, requests for doctrine variants. I had none to give. Everything we knew about war assumed energy dominance. This enemy treated energy as input. I felt something crack, not panic, not fear, but certainty. The quiet certainty that the model had failed. Another message arrived from the human-led, cease fire. You are only charging our armor. I cut the channel without replying. Pride demanded silence. Reality demanded adaptation. I ordered a temporary fire halt to reassess. The beams died. The void darkened. The human ships did not slow. For the first time, I understood the danger of calling something a relic. Relics endure. Velocity is a form of decision. When our fire ceased, the human ships answered not with weapons, but with acceleration. Drives flared across their line in perfect sequence, not a charge, but a calculation unfolding. The range dropped from 1.5 million kilometers to 1.2 in a single update. Then faster. Measure thrust, I ordered. My adjutant swallowed. Sustained. Acceleration reading. 12 G. That was crew fatal for most species. Even with dampening, even for short bursts. These ships held it without deviation, vectors clean, heat signatures disciplined. Their formation did not stretch or compress. It flowed. Relics do not fly like this. They did not aim for our center. They slid across it. Human vectors curved through our elegant arcs, forcing recalculations across the fleet. Council doctrine prized symmetry, interlocking fields, layered ranges, mutual support. Their motion attacked the assumptions beneath it. Range, 900,000 kilometers. Time to intercept. Recalculating. Our captains adjusted instinctively, tightening lines, rotating hulls to maintain firing solutions. The humans anticipated each correction. Their ships threaded the gaps we created. forcing collisions of command authority rather than metal. A punchline appeared on my board as formations buckled. They are inside the lattice. Energy weapons tried to track them. Targeting lagged behind acceleration spikes. Fire solutions bloomed and died as human ships crossed predicted positions before calculations completed. Missiles lost lock beams, chased ghosts. Collapse the outer arcs, I snapped. Regain. Spacing. Too late. Human vectors crossed the threshold where our fleet geometry became a liability. Ships masked one another. Fields overlapped inefficiently. We began to interfere with ourselves. Range. 400,000 kilometers. The humans split the knot into chaos, but into purpose. 3 prongs. Each 67 ships, redistributed with ruthless logic. One vector, pinned our left wing. Another slid beneath our command spine. The third aimed straight for the heart of coordination. They were not flanking us, they were unmaking us. Casualty projections. I demanded. My adjutant shook her head. Projections invalid. They're not engaging yet. That realization struck harder than any weapon. They were closing under fire discipline, not firing back. Waiting until geometry favored certainty. 12. G sustained 4 minutes now. Crews either reinforced beyond our understanding, or irrelevant to the equation. Another standalone. Line cuts through the bridge noise. They planned this. Our fleet began to fracture. Captains broke formation to preserve autonomy. Others held doctrine too long and found themselves isolated, targets without mutual cover. Command lag increased by whole seconds, unacceptable at these velocities. Range, 180,000 kilometers. Human. Ships rolled, presenting armored prows, kinetic housings visible now. Rail apertures irised open along their hulls, silent and precise. Missiles armed, but did not launch. Everything waited. I felt the weight of it, then the calm inevitability. This was not bravery. This was rehearsal. Acceleration as language. Geometry as weapon. Signal all units, I said, voice steady, despite the tightening in my chest. Prepare for close engagement. All ships, free fire authorization. Before the order finished propagating, the range fell below 100,000 kilometers. Human ships cut. Acceleration in unison. The sudden stillness was worse than the burn. They had arrived exactly where they intended to be. With energy to spare, formations collapsed, and our fleet breathing over itself. I understood, with brutal clarity, that the battle had passed a line. We could not redraw. Whatever came next would be measured. And it would not favor elegance. Arithmetic decides what rhetoric cannot. The humans fired at 92,000 kilometers. There was no warning tone, no energy spike to herald it. Railgun apertures along their hulls, irised and closed in the same breath. Slugs left barrels at 0.08 C, invisible until they arrived. Our sensors registered the impacts after the fact, data catching up to reality. 3 command vessels vanished. In 11 seconds. Not explosion and erasures. Mass met velocity and ceased to be structured. Hulls cored, spines snapped. Internal volumes vented into plasma fog that expanded and cooled before alarms could complete a cycle. A standalone line cut. Through the bridge noise, mass always arrives first. Missiles followed, not as salvos but as punctuation. Human warheads threaded the debris fields with disciplined spacing, targeting relay nodes and engine clusters. Each detonation severed a function rather than maximizing spectacle. Ships went dark. Fleets lost cohesion. Reassign command. Someone shouted. There was no one to reassign to. The chain had been cut at calculated intervals. Human targeting prioritized flag bridges, fleet synchronizers, doctrinal cores. They were not killing ships. They were killing coordination. Timestamps scrolled across my board. First impact, to command loss. 11 seconds. Secondary strikes complete, 38 seconds. Fleet coherence degradation, 64%. I ordered return fire. Energy weapons screamed back to life. But human ships rolled and angled, presenting armor profiles that drank the beams. Kinetics ignored the exchange and kept counting. Rail slugs punched through cruisers at oblique angles, shattering internal decks without touching outer hulls. Casualty reports flooded imprecise, horrifying numbers. Crew loss per vessel: 63%. Total confirmed dead: 41,200. Human losses: none detected. Missiles bloomed again. This time at longer arcs, herding surviving ships into kill corridors defined minutes earlier. Our captains tried to scatter. The humans anticipated it, firing not at where we were, but where doctrine forced us to go. They had solved us. Another punchline appeared. Stark and undeniable. This was rehearsed. I watched a carrier group attempt to break free, engines flaring past safe output. A human destroyer adjusted vector by 2 degrees and fired once. The slog took the carrier through its central habitat ring. The ship folded, then split, then went quiet. No follow-up shot. No excess. My adjutant's voice shook. Admiral, they're counting. She was right. The cadence was fixed. Railgun fire every 3.2 seconds. Missile waves every 14. Not reacting. Executing. I ordered a retreat vector. Half the fleet could not compliant, crippled, command links severed, hulls venting atmosphere. The rest turned inward, tripping over each other as they tried to escape a geometry designed to prevent it. Human ships advanced at reduced acceleration now. Almost gentle, maintaining pressure without urgency. Their fire slackened as targets surrendered or drifted powerless. A human transmission cut through the chaos, broadcast on all channels. Power down. Transponders on. Medical aid available? It was absurd. Mercy offered in the middle of arithmetic. Even as another rail slug erased a fleeing frigate that ignored the call. Choice. Then consequence. I stared at the tactical board as it emptied of icons. 10,000 had become scattered hundreds in less than 6 minutes. The humans had not raised their voices. They had not altered their tone. They had simply applied numbers until resistance fell away. I authorized surrender for any unit. Able to hear me. Weapons went cold across the surviving ships. One by one, transponders lit. The humans ceased fire within a single cycle. Missiles self-destructing harmlessly, rails falling silent. The void settled into wreckage and quiet. I understood then that this was not brutality. It was accounting. Every shot justified. Every second measured. No rage. No rage. The humans held position, weapons ready but idle. As if waiting for a next step already written. And I knew, with bitter clarity, that the lesson was complete. The arithmetic had been explained. Law is what remains when the firing stops. The human broadcast did not arrive with fanfare. No anthem. No emblem. It cut across every band we monitored, narrow and wide, piggybacking on our own relays as if they had always belonged there. Translation lag was negligible. They had prepared for our languages. A human officer appeared on the screen, posture, formal, voice level. No armor. No visible weapon. The calm was deliberate. This engagement is concluded, she said. Hostilities cease upon surrender. Powered down weapons. Activate transponders. Medical assistance will be rendered. She paused exactly 3 seconds. Long enough to be intentional. We do not kill prisoners. The bridge around me went silent. Even now, after the arithmetic, the statement felt like a challenge. Mercy declared from a position of dominance, carried a different weight. The broadcast continued, expanding beyond the battlefield. Civilian bands. Trade routes. Archival nets. The galaxy listened because nothing else was happening.
Humanity recognizes no authority that permits slavery, the officer said. No doctrine that processes populations. No war that excuses atrocity as efficiency. Images accompanied the words. Clean, factual, our own records intercepted. And replayed processing schedules, population audits. Casualty forecasts rendered as logistics. A standalone line appeared on the public feed. We saw what you normalized. I felt a sickness that had nothing to do with fear. The humans were not accusing. They were documenting. Prisoners of this engagement, the officer continued, are protected under human law. They will receive medical care. They will be fed. They will be tried. Guilt will be individual. Punishment will be lawful. Numbers followed, precise as their fire had been. Confirmed captives, 14,200. Medical teams, deployed, 312. Field hospitals active, 19. Execution count, 0. Across the tactical board, surrendered ships stabilized. Human cutters moved in careful. Arcs docking without force. Injured crews were evacuated first, regardless of rank. No one was dragged. No one was struck, one of my captains whispered. They're serious, I knew it already. This was not posturing. This was doctrine. As mature and rehearsed as their acceleration profiles, the broadcast widened further. To all observing polities, the officer said, this is notice. Surrender is honored. Civilians are protected. Slavers will face trial. War against humanity will be met with decisive force followed by restraint. Another pause. Another deliberate space. We are not here to rule you. That line spread. Faster than the rest. We are here to end certain practices. I felt the political gravity shift in real time. Coalition channels lit with requests for clarification. Border systems queried ceasefire terms. Neutral observers recorded everything. Timestamps and casualty ratios included. On my bridge, the last fires were being extinguished. Wounded were stabilized. My fleet, what remained of it, waited in silence, not for orders, but for judgment. The human officer inclined her head slightly. Proceeding to phase law, she said. Compliance acknowledged. A feed cut. No threats followed. No victory. Speech. Just action boarding teams, medics, legal cadres deploying with the same discipline as the guns had fired. I understood then that the battle had been only the opening argument. The real change was this, and it was being broadcast to everyone. Preparation. Leaves fingerprints if you know where to look. The first coalition analysis node finished reconstructing. The battle 6 minutes after the last human railgun fell silent. Others followed within the hour. What they found unsettled even those accustomed to galactic war. Human ships had not arrived in response to the Council incursion. They had been there. Telemetry overlays revealed dormant mass signatures in the system dating back 47 years. Cold hulks parked beyond the ecliptic. Drives powered down, emissions masked against background radiation. 67 vessels, exactly matching the active combat roster, had been waiting in silence. Not hiding. Waiting. Coalition observers compared acceleration curves, firing cadences, and formation shifts against known human naval exercises. The matches were too close to be coincidence. Doctrine age estimate, 212 to 340 years. Deviation from exercise profiles, under 3%, a senior analyst on the Mirren Exchange summarized it bluntly. This was not a response force, this was a standing answer. Archived human material surfaced next, not secret ignored. Old treaties, defense white papers, naval academies discussing energy denial warfare and kinetic certainty in dry, unfashionable language. While the galaxy optimized elegance, humans had optimized inevitability. Another punchline rippled through coalition channels. They planned for us to be arrogant. Shipyard data followed. Human hulls showed layered refit histories, armor plates replaced and re-replaced, internal volumes redesigned around crew survivability at sustained 12G burns. These were not experimental frames. They were mature platforms, stress-tested over generations. Crew records deepened the unease. Average combat officer. Experience 18.6 years. Average fleet drill hours per crew member, 31,000. Simulated engagements against council-equivalent fleets, 9,400. One observer noted the absence of improvisation. Every maneuver had precedent. Every kill shot matched a documented solution set. Even the mercy protocols, the boarding sequences, the medical triage priorities were codified decades earlier. Human readiness was not emotional. It was administrative. Political analysts joined the assessment. Why preposition fleets in quiet systems? Why maintain doctrines for wars that had not happened? The answer appeared in an old human strategic maxim, circulated now with new respect. Preparation is cheaper than panic. The Council's defeat reframed centuries of assumption. Humanity had not been weak, it had been patient. It had watched empires rise and codify cruelty, watched energy weapons become status symbols, watched slavery renamed as efficiency, and it had written laws in advance. Coalition sensors picked up further anomalies beyond the battlefield, logistics trails, fuel depots seated along probable invasion corridors, quiet listening posts at gravitational choke points. None of it new. Some installations dated back over 100 years, readiness status, green across all theaters. A junior analyst asked the question no one wanted to voice. If this was the response to a probe, what do they have for a war? No one answered. On the captured council ships, human legal teams cataloged evidence with methodical care. No haste, no celebration. The machinery of consequence turned as smoothly as the guns had fired. Observers began to revise their maps. Borders softened around human space. Neutral systems filed provisional accords. Trade routes adjusted to orbit a new certainty. The humans did not announce this shift. They did not need to. Preparation had spoken for them. Across decades and light years, with the calm authority of something that had never been rushed. And the galaxy understood, too late, that this fleet had not been assembled for today. It had simply been waiting for someone to arrive. Neutralization is quieter than battle. What remained of the Council fleet drifted in broken geometry, hundreds of ships without coordination. Engines throttled down or dead, weapons cold by choice or necessity. The humans did not rush them. They advanced in measured arcs, maintaining distance bands calculated to prevent panic and collision. Missile waves launched first, not to kill, but to constrain. Low-yield kinetic interceptors detonated ahead of fleeing vectors, blossoming into debris fields precisely mapped to close escape corridors. Each burst was a gate, not a blow. Ships slowed, turned, found themselves boxed. By inevitability, time to full containment. 14 minutes, boarding craft followed. Compact, armored cutters slid toward disabled hulls, transponder codes flashing compliance requests in every known language. Where ships powered down, the cutters docked gently, seals forming without hull breach. Where captains hesitated, human vessels repositioned, railguns tracking without firing, a single line echoed across surrender channels. Choose restraint. We already have dominance. Some ships tried to run. A cluster of frigates dumped mass and burned hard, engines screaming past tolerance. Human destroyers adjusted vectors by fractions of a degree. Missiles launched 6 per target, no more. Impacts took engines cleanly. Hulls spun, intact but helpless. Casualties from the intercept 0. Boarding teams moved in. Inside the council ships, expectations collapsed. No shock troops, no executions. Humans entered in disciplined files, weapons lowered but ready, voices. Come. Medical units followed immediately, prioritizing atmosphere loss and radiation burns. Rank did not matter. Injury did. Confirmed surrenders climbed in steady increments. 3,800, 7,200, 11,900. A cascade formed. Ships seeing their neighbors boarded without slaughter powered down voluntarily. Transponders lit across the grid like stars returning after eclipse. 1. Council cruiser fired in desperation at a boarding cutter. The response was immediate and limited. A rail slug punched through the cruiser's forward magazine. The ship went dark. No follow-up shots. A punchline rippled through both fleets. Non-compliance ends fast. Compliance spreads faster. Human Marines secured bridges and engine rooms, cataloging crews and sealing weapons. Evidence teams followed, recording logs, command orders, processing directives. Nothing was destroyed that could be archived. Nothing was taken without receipt. Total boarding. Operations, 412. Average time per vessel, 6 minutes. Human casualties 2 injured, none killed. Missile waves shifted roles, now serving as sentinels, quiet orbits enforcing perimeter discipline. Any sudden thrust drew immediate attention. None went unanswered. On my own ship, I waited. Power was down. Weapons locked. My officers stood in silence as a human cutter approached, its hull scarred but steady. Docking clamps engaged with a muted thud. The boarding team entered without drama. Their leader met my gaze, eyes level. You are under protection, she said. Remain where you are. No chains, no raised voices. My wrists remained free. Across the tactical board, the last resistance icons winked out. Some ships self-scuttled rather than surrender. The humans did not interfere. Rescue craft stood by to retrieve escape pods. Total confirmed dead from final. Actions, 1,103. Total prisoners secured, 14,200. When the last cutter reported clear, human ships eased into holding patterns. Weapons stayed trained but idle. Medics worked. Engineers stabilized hulks to prevent further loss of life. The void settled again, filled now with quiet motion instead of fire. Neutralization complete. What struck the observers most was not the scale, but the restraint. Every action had a ceiling. Every response stopped the moment compliance began. The humans dismantled the fleet the way one disassembles a machine piece by piece without anger. I understood then that the second set piece was never about victory. It was about proof that dominance could be applied without excess, that surrender meant survival. That fear was unnecessary if order was accepted. The humans held the field, not as conquerors, but as custodians of an outcome they had already decided, and there was nothing left for us to do but accept it. Mercy is administered, not declared. I learned this in a medical bay that still smelled of coolant and burned insulation. Human medics moved with efficient quiet, stabilizing limbs, sealing burns, murmuring reassurances in accents pulled from a dozen worlds. Rank meant nothing here. Injury did. A display on the bulkhead ticked upward as the work continued. Prisoners stabilized, 13,870. Critical patients remaining, 112. I was cataloged, scanned, and issued a status marker: non-hostile, pending review, not shackled, not isolated. When I asked what came next, the answer was immediate. Trial, the medic said. Individual. The word landed harder than any weapon. Not processing. Not collective judgment, individual. Evidence teams had already begun compiling cases, correlating orders to outcomes, signatures to consequences. Command responsibility was mapped with the same precision as targeting solutions. A human legal officer addressed us later, tone formal but not unkind. You are alive because you surrendered. That choice matters. What you did before it also matters. A standalone line circulated among the prisoners. Dominance ended the fight. Law begins after. Across the system, human ships transitioned from combat posture to governance support. Field courts were established on neutral platforms. Defense counsel assigned. Translation ensured. No rush. No spectacle. Scheduled trials, 312. Estimated duration, 18 to 36 months. Summary executions, 0. The galaxy was watching. Neighboring systems reacted first with caution, then calculation. Trade guilds rerouted convoys toward human-protected lanes. Border polities transmitted ceasefire acknowledgments without being asked. A cluster of mid-rim systems filed provisional accords recognizing human legal authority over anti-slavery. Enforcement. Political gravity shifted quietly. Like a tide, human broadcasts continued, not triumphant but procedural. Lists of protections, clear surrender terms, explicit prohibitions. Civilians were evacuated from contested zones under human escort. 20 million, moved in 6 hours without a single recorded loss. Observers noted the absence of conquest markers. No flags planted, no governors installed. Human ships did not linger over worlds. They stayed just long enough to ensure stability, then withdrew to holding distances. Another punchline appeared on coalition feeds. They win, then leave rules behind. On my own vessel, engines were repaired under supervision. Crews were fed, families were notified. I watched officers who had expected death sit in silence, grappling with survival offered without cruelty. A junior captain asked a human liaison what would happen to us after trial. That depends, she sighed. On evidence, on remorse, on restitution. And if we're found guilty? Then punishment, she replied evenly. But not annihilation. Outside the viewport, human ships formed a quiet perimeter, neither threatening nor absent. They were present in the way infrastructure is present: reliable, unremarked, essential. I understood then why systems were defecting toward them, not out of fear, but predictability. Power that constrained itself was safer than power that did. Not. As the last wounded were stabilized and the first legal proceedings scheduled, I felt the war recede, not because it had been forgotten, but because it had been resolved into something orderly. The humans had not offered forgiveness. They had offered a future that functioned. And the galaxy, weighing its options, began to lean in their direction. The quiet arrived before the warning. Human ships held their perimeter with the same discipline they had shown in battle. Wreckage was mapped and tagged, survivors transferred. Courts scheduled. The system settled into something resembling order, and for the first time since the council entered it, nothing was actively dying. Then the sensors spoke. It began as background noise on a deep-range array positioned well beyond the ecliptic. A listening post older than most of the ships now orbiting nearby. A low-frequency distortion, barely above cosmic drift, detected at 900 astronomical units and moving inward. A human sensor officer frowned. Rerun filter, cross-check historical signatures. The distortion sharpened, shape emerged. Pattern followed, contact. Classification escalated without ceremony. Outer rim, signature confirmed. The designation rippled through human command channels with immediate gravity. Not alarm, recognition, as if an old name had been spoken aloud. Range, 900 astronomical units and closing. Velocity, subliminal, constant. Mass estimate, indeterminate. I watched from a secured observation deck as human analysts worked. No raised voices. No confusion. Data layers stacked, radiation profiles, gravitational shear, emission voids where something absorbed rather than reflected. One analyst spoke quietly. Matches exterminator records, pre-compact era? Another nodded. Dormant cycle likely ended by energy spike. Our engagement was loud. A standalone line appeared on an internal display, visible even from where I stood, older than the council. The implications settled heavily. The fleet that had just been dismantled was not the apex predator it believed itself to be. It was prey that had learned to wear crowns. Human command convened a brief conference. Minutes, not hours. Decisions surfaced. Fully formed. Fleet readiness adjusted from green to amber. Long-range pickets deployed. Civilian evacuation contingencies reviewed. Again. No panic. No speeches. A human commander addressed the assembled observers, voice calm, almost regretful. This engagement concludes our response to the council. What approaches next is unrelated and significantly worse. Someone asked what the signature represented. An exterminator species, the commander replied. They do not conquer, they erase. We have records of 3 destroyed regions, no survivors, no negotiations. Why haven't they been seen before? Another voice asked. The commander's answer was simple. Because they hunt quietly. Beyond the viewport, human ships began subtle repositioning, forming deeper layers, wider arcs. Not massing, spreading, preparing for something that would not be impressed by numbers. Estimated time to inner system threshold, 72 hours. I felt the scale of it then, not the coming threat, but the difference between this moment and the battle that had ended. The council had been an interruption. This was continuity. Human officers reviewed doctrines that predated the council's rise. Ancient contingency plans unlocked. Fleets beyond this system acknowledged silent alerts and adjusted course without question. Readiness was not emotional. It was reflex. The human commander concluded the briefing with a final statement, broadcast narrowly to those cleared to hear it. We will delay them here, she said, as long as necessary. No promise of victory. No assurance of survival. Just responsibility, accepted without ceremony. As the system returned to its quiet, now threaded with preparation instead of debris, I understood the final lesson of the war one had lost. Humanity had not revealed itself today. Merely stepped forward. Whatever was coming from beyond the quiet rim would not find a surprised galaxy. It would find one that had finally learned, who had been waiting all along.